Hey guys, welcome to another exciting edition of eLearning Livestream. My name's Paul Wilson, and I will be taking you through some stuff today. We'll be talking about fluid box responsive design and specific to building your companies, your organizations, your clients' template. And I hesitate to use the word template for a couple of reasons, and I'll explain that. In Adobe Captivate, the history of Captivate is that they came out with something called template files quite a few years ago. It was a way of storing, your master slide, your object styles. Was it before object styles? I can't remember. And well, basically all your stuff, a couple of sample slides into this template, and you could start all your new projects from that template slide or series of slides. And it worked okay. There was some people who think it's kind of buggy. I think they're fine. But the latest trend is to go towards these things that Captivate, or rather Adobe, calls themes. And we'll get right into it today. But first off, I just want to take a couple moments and remind everyone of a few things. Nothing major here. We're just talking, of course, about some upcoming events. One of the things that you're going to want to check out if you can be in the Washington D.C. area in April, as a matter of fact. Let me just quickly bring this up here. And I'll just share my desktop with you guys and just show you real quick here. And I'll pop this link perhaps into the live chat here, and maybe we can put it in the description later on. But the idea here is that this is essentially a conference for people just like us, like Adobe Captivate people. So, if you can be in the Washington, D.C. area on April 15th, you can attend the Adobe eLearning Conference 2020. I haven't been invited yet, but in years past, I've been invited to speak about a variety of different Adobe Captivate related topics. And in addition to that, the last couple of years, or the last couple of live events for Adobe, I've been also invited to come a day early and be one of the instructors for the Adobe Captivate Specialist certification. So if you're interested in also getting yourself certified, this is the event for you. So as you can see on my screen here, there's a link for the Adobe Captivate Specialist program. The idea is that you're going to be given about 2 weeks before the event itself, you're going to be given a whole ton of content for you to go through, exercises, and of course the appropriate starting and complete project files to go with each of those exercise files. In total, it's about 7.5 hours worth of video. And I would say that if you're going to go through that material, it's going to probably take you twice as long, if not longer. Because if you're not just going to watch the videos and actually follow with the exercise files, which is what I recommend, which to me would get you the most out of this program. But there's an extensive explanation here. They've got the agenda. So this is a full day event on April 14th. I or one of the other instructors will be taking you through all this. It includes breakfast, lunch, and a whole bunch of coffee breaks. But also, of course, you'll walk away with a great solid understanding. And even if you don't have Adobe Captivate right now, about 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks before the event, download the free trial, install it on your laptop. This is a bring your own laptop event. So bring your laptop, you'll work through the exercise files. And of course, on the day of, I'll be conducting, or someone like me will be conducting these classroom sessions. Some of it will be review, some of it will be focusing on particular areas of Adobe Captivate. And then at the end of the day, you'll write an assessment. And if you pass the assessment, and it's multiple choice, I don't think there's any true false, but there's multiple answer questions. And, it's a challenging test, but I firmly believe that if you do the work ahead of time and you do the work in the workshop the day of, you'll be successful. If I recall correctly, it's 70% to pass. I could be mistaken on that. I'll try to double check that later. Maybe I'll put it in the description of the video once I've confirmed it. But that sounds right to me. And and I think it's a fair assessment. Some of the questions are a little more challenging. Even myself, I found a few of them kind of challenging because it's things that maybe I don't do every day. But at the end, you'll know right away whether you've passed and become an Adobe Captivate specialist. If you were attending the following day, let's go back to the previous page. Which would make sense because the following day, I should point out that the Captivate Specialist program, normally an $800 event, but when it's coincided with a conference like this, they lower the price. It's going to be $499 for anyone who wishes to attend while at the Adobe eLearning conference. So that's the 14th. On the 15th is the absolutely complimentary Adobe eLearning conference. Again, this is Washington, D.C., so if you can get there, if you can talk to your manager right now as they're starting to plan budgets for 2020, talk about this with your manager and say, listen, this is something I would definitely like to attend. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Not only get the certification, but all you have to pay for is your travel and accommodation. Once you're here at the Adobe eLearning conference, you get another full day of all sorts of great stuff, like some fantastic keynote speakers. There's going to be 5 different learning tracks where you'll get a whole series of different tips and tricks and learning and how to do responsive design and how to do this, that, and the other things. So I think the value speaks for itself. You'll also even get one of my favorites, and even if I wasn't a speaker, I might come to these things just to find out about what the new product is going to do, what the next version of Adobe Captivate is going to include with it, because there's always new features to attract people to start using Adobe Captivate, of course. But there's not a lot of detail here yet. This website will continue to be updated as we get closer to the event, and they'll make announcements like who the keynote speaker is and who some of the speakers are and things like that. So if you're interested in learning a lot about Adobe Captivate in a very short period of time, and you can wait till April, then this is a great opportunity for you. So I just wanted to mention that. If you're joining my live stream today and you're not a subscriber, I really strongly encourage you to hit that subscribe button. Also, turn on notifications as well, so that when a new live stream like this is posted or started, you'll be notified as well. If I upload a new tutorial like I might be doing sometime this week, you'll be notified when that's up as well, and you can take advantage of all the knowledge that I give away for free as well. But I don't just do little tutorials here and there. I also offer my services as an e-learning designer developer and, of course, an Adobe Captivate teacher. So you can check out my website at captivateteacher.com and take a look at all the stuff that I have there for you as well. So if you need help with your next e-learning project, you can hire me to do that. All of course, the e-learning that I prefer to design and can help you with, of course, is the really effective stuff. I want my stuff to be engaging and effective for your organization. I'm not interested, of course, in those basic PowerPoint type courses. So if you want something really interesting and engaging for your learners, check out my website, captivateteacher.com. And of course, if you just want to learn more about Adobe Captivate but can't quite find the video you're looking for, I'm also available to hire for one-on-one instruction as well. But today, what we're going to be talking about is fluid box responsive design. So I'm going to turn off my webcam for right now, and we're going to switch to my desktop view here so you can see what's going on there. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off, and I'm going to share with you kind of my workflow, at least in a somewhat condensed version, when when I have to think about building a new theme or template, if you will. I don't like using template because, again, it's kind of a dirty word in the Adobe Captivate space. There's been, the other types of projects that use templates in the past were not exactly ideal. But again, today we're going to talk about themes and building one that is responsive, design ready. So I'm just going to close this project here and go back to the new project tab. This is the window that you see when you first open Adobe Captivate. By the way, if you have any questions, I'm going to try to kind of keep one eye on the live chat. So if you have any questions as we go, feel free to use the live chat. It's located just on the right-hand side of your page if you're viewing this on my YouTube channel. If you're watching the recorded session, you can type your questions down in the comments below, and I'll see them at some point and get back to you. So here we go. Let's start with a responsive design project. Now in Adobe Captivate 2019, I'm running update 3, which is the latest version. If you're on a Mac, the latest version is update 4. You can check your version by going into the help screen here and clicking on About Adobe Captivate. So in this case here, for Windows, it's 11.5.1.499. That's the most up-to-date version at the time that I'm recording this here. So I've started to build a responsive design project here. Now, the very first thing I need to do is deal with creating a unique theme. Now, if I go into the theme icon on my toolbar, you'll see that I've got pearls selected. And in fact, when I'm starting a new theme, I prefer to start off with a blank theme. And this blank theme, of course, is very generic because I don't want to inherit too much from other themes. And before I get too far into it, I'm going to click on the Themes drop-down menu and Save Theme As. And I'm going to put this on my desktop. Now, one question that comes to mind, that comes up from time to time, is why wouldn't I save this in the same folder that all of these themes, the themes that are located in this icon here, why wouldn't I save it there? Well, if I have to reinstall Adobe Captivate, all of this stuff's going to be wiped out and reset back to normal. So I would recommend that keeping your theme files with the projects that they're going to go with. Like, for example, if I was doing some training for Adobe, for example, I would create a folder on my hard drive or on my cloud drive called Adobe, and I would put all of the CPTX, the Adobe Captivate project files, in that folder. But in there as well would be this theme file. A theme file, just quickly here, I'll just show you, you can see there it is there. If I right click on this and go with properties, the file extension, instead of CPTX, like for a regular Captivate project, is CPTM. I don't know what goes inside the actual file itself, but from within Captivate, it's going to store all of my colors, it's going to store all of my master slides, and everything associated with what I'm going to share with you today. So most of the work will be done on the master slide. So let's open up my properties inspector and we'll click on the master slide view. We'll move there first. And I like this particular theme because it doesn't have all of these extra slides that, quite frankly, you really don't need. In this case here, we have a title slide, we have a blank slide, and we have all of our question slides and a quiz results slide. So really that's what you need to customize when you're building your own theme, your own design. But I also like to build a lot of the content, or as much as the content, onto the actual master slides as possible. And let's start off with a design for this fictitious trucking company that I'm going to be building this theme for today. So I'm going to take this this title placeholder, and actually for right now, I think I'll just delete it. And I'm just going to resize my desktop a little bit here so we can see more of it. Now you have to start thinking in terms of what will this look like on a desktop, excuse me, on a desktop, but also on a smartphone or a tablet. Now I'm just going to switch back to webcam view for a moment and talk about this a little bit here. So here's my smartphone, and when I'm doing something on my smartphone, more often than not, I'm holding it like this, right? Which makes sense. That's most of the apps on your phone are going to be in portrait phone. You see some people using their phones like this, and maybe that's the case for making a video or taking a photograph or whatever. But even like the photo apps that you have on your phone, a lot of them now, especially with like Instagram stories and Twitter and stuff like that, people are using their phones like this. This is becoming the dominant computing device that people have with them on the go. So you're going to see aspect ratios a little bit different. Even with my tablet, while I might, watch a movie or something like that on my tablet like this, the reality is that I'm probably, reading it like a book, so it's going to be something like this where I'm sitting here holding it, something like that. So when you're considering, of course, the layout design, start thinking in terms of what that's going to be like on desktop, what it's going to be like on a tablet, what it's going to be like on a smartphone, and think about the kind of things that happen on these devices. So let's start by coming up with some basic fluid boxes here. So I'm thinking, I'm going to start off, now this might sound crazy at first, but I think you'll see why I'm doing this. I'm going to start off by choosing two horizontal fluid boxes side by side. Now this one's not set up to stretch. I'm going to change that. And talking a little bit about some of the settings within fluid boxes. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we only have about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how long this goes. But, there are some things that I like to take advantage of. I usually will add some padding around the different fluid boxes or within the fluid boxes themselves, depending on what my needs are for each individual slide. So typically on a title slide, I only need really one of those. So I can kind of do a lot of the customization right on my master slide. So in this case here, this is what I want to have happen. When I'm on my desktop computer and looking at this content, I'm going to have some content over here and I'm going to have some content over here. But I want those to kind of push down one on top of the other when I get into tablet, portrait, and smartphone portrait mode. And that's going to be an important decision. In fact, I'm going to change that. In this case here, I'm going to use this as just sort of a placeholder to take advantage of images and things like that. Really, my content's going to be over here. Now, so instead, what I'm going to do is instead change that from wrapping to the next row, which is what's happening when you see this here. I'm going to change that to squeeze in a row, and then I'm going to select the second of these two fluid boxes, and scrolling down a little bit, I'm going to make that optional. So what's going to happen is that when there's not enough room to display both of them, the second fluid box disappears. So this will be useful if let's say I have some different fluid boxes in this fluid box, because not only do you have a parent fluid box, as you can see here, but you can set up child fluid boxes, but also child fluid boxes within other child fluid boxes. So it gets it gets a little crazy. I don't like to go too far down that rabbit hole. Now here's what I'm thinking. Before I go much further, I want a background image behind all of these fluid boxes. So I'm going to select my parent fluid box, and I've gone and found an image that I'm going to use for this particular project here. Let's open up the folder here. It's a trucking company. I've got the logo over here, and we've got something, some free stock photography that I got. I'm just going to open this up in Photoshop. And, you know, if you're an e-learning developer like me and you don't have Photoshop, talk to your learning and development manager about getting Photoshop, because it is super crucial. In the same way that if you're editing audio files, you need Adobe Audition or whatever equivalent software your organization is dealing with. So when I find really good stock photography, one of the first things I do, if I intend to use it within my e-learning course, is I'm going to go in and first of all, let's take a look at the image size. I'm going to switch this to pixels because that's the unit of measure that I know best. So this is 3,817 pixels by 2,522 pixels. Quite frankly, that is too large for the typical e-learning project. This project I'm developing, its maximum desktop size is 1024 by 627. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in those numbers in here, and as long as I'm not getting a smaller width or smaller height than one of those, I'll just swap those out. So 1024 by 677 works. So I'm just going to resize to that. You'll see it gets considerably smaller. Let's bump this up as large as we can go here. Now, it's not the right aspect ratio, so I want to make sure that I'm using sort of my maximum aspect ratio. You know, at least you might decide to go a little bit further than this, but I'd say it's safe to say that you're probably okay with the settings here. So I'm going to go in and change the canvas size. Canvas size is great because I can pick an anchor, whether I'm anchoring to the left or the right. In this case here, I'm going to anchor to the bottom right, and this is based on keeping this truck in the frame. And sky, well, let's go to the sky. I like the sky. That's a nice touch there. And I'm just going to change this value here to 627, so it's perfectly sized for my desktop view in Captivate. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go proceed, and there I have my image. So the first thing I want to point out to you is when we look at this image here, that's 5 megabytes, and at first glance you might think it's not so big. Really? It's not so large. But if I have 100 images, 100 such images in my e-learning course, that's going to be a 500 megabyte project. That's going to be very difficult for someone in an e-learning course to stream that to their mobile device, especially expensive as well if they have a limited to the amount of data that they can use. So let's go back to Photoshop here. I'm going to export this as, and this is an image with pictures and like photography. So I'll choose JPEG. You could do PNG, but there's no text or graphics or illustrations here. So JPEG's probably a great choice. And I like using the export as option because this will optimize the file size for you. I'm just going to give this a new name, truck background. So let's close this out. We'll close out Photoshop. I don't need to save from the original. And let's just do a quick comparison here. So this one here, the original image that I downloaded, 5 megabytes. This image that's now prepared for my responsive design fluid box course is 315 kilobytes. So considerably smaller, like 1/10 the size basically. So or no, even less actually, but that's fantastic. So Let's close this window out. Let's go back to Captivate. Here's my background, and I'm going to use the fill feature to put this particular image in the background. So the first thing you need to do is select whether you're using a solid, gradient, or image fill. In this case, we're using image fill. And it puts one of these ugly built-in image fills. No worries though. We click on that option, and then we're going to use the folder icon, and that's going to allow us to import in the image of our choice. Now we've already prepared the image, as you know, and where are we here? Where did I save that? Images, is that where I put it? Make sure you choose the right one. I'm going to click open, and we have perfectly viewed on the screen here. Couple things of note is that you can choose to tile the image. That might be applicable. And it's probably what I would choose. But I would also consider what tile type I'm going to use. Am I going to tile from the top left, or am I going to tile from the top right? In this case, remember, I want to keep that sky visible and the truck in the shot at all times. So let's try going with top right. And let's see what happens when this slide gets resized. You see the truck comes with it, which is the effect that I wanted to have. The other opportunities, of course, is I could actually have it centered, in which case the image will stay relatively fixed and then the sides kind of shrink in. That might be a good choice, actually, because, you know, like maybe just seeing the edge of the truck and the title of the course there might be a great way to go. The other possibility could be to left align this. Let's go to the left here, and this way we've got the horizon always in view, and maybe the truck disappears. I actually kind of like that, but again, the image will kind of dictate this, and you can make choices from there. So let's start to build some additional placeholders for our content for the title slide. So I'm going to hit Fluid Box. This case, I'm going to go vertical. I'm working within the left-hand fluid box right now, and I'm going to have a little space holder, if you will. Then I'm going to have title. Actually, no. Then I'm going to have logo, title, subtitle. Yeah, that works. Let's undo that. I want to do that differently. And that's how I select my fluid boxes. I think, what do I need to put on this slide, and where does it need to go, and in what order? And that's sort of how I pick my fluid boxes. So spacer, title, subtitle, no, sorry, spacer, logo, title, subtitle, navigation, final spacer. So now I have all this stuff here. So what did I say? Spacer, logo. Let's bring the logo in. Now in this case here, you can use any logo that you have. Obviously the best quality logo is probably the best thing you're going to want to do, because I'll tell you from my experience working with clients, they definitely want the really best representation of their brand or their product. I've already gone ahead and chosen what I think is the best way to represent a logo, and that's using an SVG image. So I've already got that prepared. Here it is. It's called Asset 1. That's just what it was exported as from Illustrator. I'm going to open that up, and that should appear in a second there. Now, it might look kind of crummy on the edit mode of Captivate, but trust me, when you see this, you know, in the actual e-learning course, this will look like perfectly spot on. Now let's put in some placeholders here. In this case here, when you're in the master slide view, you can insert placeholder objects. I don't always use placeholder objects, but for things that I know will always be there, like the title of this course, you know, I'm going to go ahead and put the title there. It didn't show up in the appropriate fluid box. No worries. I just drag it to where it needs to be. That looks pretty good. You can customize well, let's do a little bit of customization here. Let's say the company in question uses Verdana as their company font, which is actually not very likely, but in this case, it's an easy choice here. This particular placeholder is using a rounded rectangle. You could change that to a square rectangle, which I would recommend here. And maybe they have a very specific color that they want to use for that font. And once I've made all of those changes to customize that to this particular company's look and feel, I'm going to save this as an object into your theme file. So I'm gonna save this to the existing style. Now there might be occasion, like let's say I'm making, and we'll get to an example of this, where I'm building sort of a main content slide, and I have a slightly different version of the title that I wish to use. I might create a new style for those, but for here, I think saving the changes to the existing style is okay. Did anyone else? I just noticed a comment from B. Daniels about losing audio. Yeah, I had some kind of weird little glitch happen from my end and everything kind of reset, including my mouse. So I guess it's probably related to that. So as long as everyone maybe give me a thumbs up or something like that in the chat so I know that you can hear me okay. But I guess if you don't hear me, then you won't know to do that. So we'll see. Just put a little yes or A-OK or something like that. All right, so I'm going to save changes to the existing style. And that's sort of my workflow. Some people will go into the edit drop-down menu all the way down to the object style. And when you get into the object style, you can select all of the object styles in your project one by one and customize them from here. I just kind of like to do it as I'm designing each slide. This way I'm not spending a lot of time in a very weird interface. I'm working with the actual appearance of my course. So down here, maybe I'm going to have a placeholder as well. So let's insert a placeholder object for subtitle, which is awesome. And in this case here, because of the background image, we need something to contrast it there. You could do a couple things that might help in a case like this. One of the things I've done in the past, I'm going to select this object, then select the fluid box by clicking on the orange tab there. And let's just make a solid fill, and let's change a few things about this. Let's make that white, and just, you know, like you could do this, like 20% white, just so, let's bump that up a bit more. There we go. So now I can very clearly see because I've got a little bit of contrast there. I'm going to do the same thing with this fluid box above it. That's 40% white. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll choose. So, you know, for those that tell you that, hey, you can't have layers in fluid boxes, that's not entirely true, because you can have completely different fills for all of your fluid boxes here. So I'm choosing a solid fill here. We're going to choose white as well, and we'll go 40%. So we have something that's layered over top of that background. I'm going to bring this one up a bit more. Maybe 50 just makes more sense here. I kind of like that better. I don't like the default rounded rectangle thing, so I'm going to change that to a regular rectangle. And that works pretty good. What do we need down here? What did I say? We're going to put a button here. Well, I don't like putting buttons on my master slide, because when you put them on the master slide, you can select something like go to next slide or whatever. Jump to a particular slide is a little more challenging. So I'm going to reserve that to my actual project itself. But, you know, suffice it to say, you could put a button on here. Just keep in mind that your buttons don't have object names. Anything you put on your master slide doesn't have an object name. So you got to sort of keep that in mind. if you're going to try to do some weird advanced actions and things like that, you're better off to reserve that stuff to the slide level. And down here, this is just a spacer. So let's check this out. Let's see what this looks like when we resize it. There we go. You can see that optional content, that optional spacer. Don't worry about things like your SVGs disappearing for a moment. They always get rendered as BMP files or bitmap images rather. But that looks pretty good. Let's exit the master slide. And as you're starting to build your course, you would use this. You'd click on Insert. You've got a brand new responsive design course here. You're using your special theme. And now New Slide From, and you can select Title. Boom, there's your slide. You just need to double click and say Trucking Orientation or something like that. Welcome to the company. So there's our first slide for our e-learning project. Let's add the next button from here. And in this case here, you can use a lot of different things as buttons nowadays. You can use, of course, traditional buttons in Captivate. I prefer shapes. So let's just grab a rectangle shape. And I'm just going to draw this approximately the size that I want it. The default choice will be to maintain aspect ratio, but I find that maintaining aspect ratio isn't always the most ideal for responsive design. So let's uncheck that, and we can just, first of all, double click on this, and we'll say begin, or something to that effect there. And let's take a look here. We were using Verdana. I don't know if I did that for the subtitle, but let's assume for a moment I did. And I'm going to bump this up to 18 points. Just make it a little bit larger here. And let's customize the appearance of the button here. Now let's see if I can get that image to come back here. I'm going to borrow from the colors of the company logo here to color my buttons. So in this case here, I'm going to choose a fill color to be perhaps a darker version of the yellows that are being used. You can use the eyedropper tool to select that. And there's my color for the button here. And the outside stroke for this button, we'll also choose from that. We'll choose the dark blue. I kind of like that as well. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to bump up, you know, and you could also put, what I like to sometimes do is in the scrap area, on my master slide, just put some shapes with these colors already applied, and then you can just use the eyedropper tool from any slide to select those. I'm going to make this 100% opacity, so that is nice and full. And but I would like some space around it. It looks too tight up against the other fluid boxes here. So again, you can select the object, select the orange tab to select the fluid box. And let's take a look at some of the settings that are here. The padding is what I want to work with here. So let's just add 10 pixels of padding around this button. So no matter what size this is, it will always have 10 pixels. Maybe we'll go a little bit more. We'll go 20 and 20 just to give it lots of open space there. So I'm pretty happy with that slide. And let's see what happens with responsive design. That looks really good. In fact, I think on a smartphone, even though you're not seeing the truck as you are on a desktop view, you're getting a nice layout there. And that's one of the styles of desktops that I might use, or styles of title slides, if you will, that I might use for that. Let me delete this original slide here, and let's go back to our master slide and start talking about a standard content slide. So let's go to master slide view. Again, we started off with a very basic fluid box theme. We chose, I think it was, what is this, blank or something like that? Not pearl, but blank. And we're customizing it. Let's do a little bit of saving as we go forward here. So let's save the theme. I already saved this to my desktop here. You'll notice my project is still Untitled 2. That's fine. This is not going to be a real project. This is just while I'm working on the theme file. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's insert a new content master slide. You can go Control Alt M to do that. And this just creates a blank slide. I'm going to put this actually after. Oh, it doesn't let me. It has to go before the blank slide here. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this Standard Content Slide. Now, as you're building a lot of the stuff, we can do a lot of branding with things like title slides. So, you know, this is where I would put a lot of things like the company logo or lots of images of the company and things like that. Where you're going to run into problems, and this is going to be where you've got these stickler agencies that you have to work with. And let me just switch views for a moment here. Oh, I'm frozen in time. I seem to have lost my webcam. Well, that's okay. We'll stick with desktop view. That appears to be working. Frozen. It's just a promo for the new Disney film Frozen 2. So I've run into this, and I'm sure all of you have, that, you know, they have these rules about their company brand, and of course their PowerPoint is a certain thing, and you have to remind these stakeholders that the content that you put in an e-learning course, especially if it's a responsive design e-learning course, you know, you're going to have to make some compromises. So I would leave off, if it's at all possible, leave off anything you don't absolutely need on this slide. So here's my sort of quick short list of what you need for standard content, you know, title, text, images, things like that. So we've got a fluid box layout. So I'm going to start with vertical. I'm going to need a place for slide titles. Now, we could debate this for a while because I honestly don't know that slide titles are necessarily super important. I think that's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a norm that's been established because of things like PowerPoint. If PowerPoint had never been invented, would we put these very large, wasteful space titles on every single slide of our course? Maybe we wouldn't. But we'll leave that debate for another day, because our job here is just to sort of build this template, if you will. Theme, pardon me. So here we are. Let's call this a placeholder for the title. We're going to have a large main content area in the middle and some navigation controls at the bottom. Now, you might end up making this 4 or 5 different fluid boxes. Again, you might need some space holders around the fluid boxes. You might also have a client who, again, insists that the logo appears somewhere, or they have to have a copyright notice on every single slide. But really, when it comes right down to it, if you can get away with 3, I'll show you a really good strategy that makes this work and allows you to continue to rapidly develop your e-learning. Because I believe that e-learning is not rapidly developed for fluid box responsive design, because it just, you know, people spend so much time trying to figure out how to fit the kinds of things that you would put in a desktop course on a tiny smartphone display. So that's always a challenge. Here's where you can take advantage of some things that I'm going to emphasize here. First of all, the default in Adobe Captivate for any fluid box is to set it up to always wrap the content to another row. I disagree with that. I think that the default option should be to constrain your content either into a row or a column. So starting with my parent fluid box here, I'm going to set these up to be squeeze in a column, and here squeeze in a row, squeeze in a row for right now, and squeeze in a row. So this will pretty much look the same whether you're on a tiny smartphone or whether you're on your full desktop here. I'm going to change the ratios of the size of these fluid boxes. You could do this a number of ways. You can, if you're on Captivate 2017, you can select the parent fluid box and then just select the selection handles and arbitrarily pick a point here and then here where you want these to go. The only thing that's going down here in navigation are back and next, submit, reset slide, closed captioning, things like that, buttons of that nature. So you don't need a lot of space for that. And again, I'm not a big fan of these big 48-point titles. So I don't think you need very much room if in fact you're going to use the title. One trick that I do use quite a bit is I will set up some padding on my parent fluid box to give me a nice margin on either side of all my content. So let's say, for example, let's select that parent fluid box. Let's use an image fill. And maybe there's another image design, but for our purposes today, let's use truck background. And I'm just going to give it sort of a faded background look, so it's just kind of faintly there. And that's kind of nice, and you can still see a little bit of that on either side here. So we have kind of a neat layout. The other thing I would do if you're on Captivate 2019, instead of using the selection handles, you could be a lot more precise with the position panel. So as you select your fluid boxes, the height here is 17.2. You might want to set this very precisely at 10%. It's always in percent because, of course, even though on this screen the height is 627, you might be looking at this on a smaller smartphone and it's going to squish everything down a little bit, and maybe it's only 500 pixels. So it'll always set at 10%. You do the same thing for the bottom here. We'll set that. I'm going to make it a little bit larger from my experience there, 11%. So we have a nice layout here. So I'm going to select my middle fluid box. And again, I'm thinking smartphone. So desktop, I could have some text over here and I could have a picture of an object I'm describing, or maybe I've got text over here in a movie or video, or maybe the video's on this side and I've got some annotations over on the right that go and coincide with that. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to divide this up into two. So now you see I've got child level fluid boxes and a set of two child level fluid boxes within one of my first child level fluid boxes. Incidentally, as you start getting into this, you'll realize that this is a little confusing. Now you can't edit these from the master slide, but on your main film strip, you can edit the names of all your fluid boxes. So you could call this parent, you could call this title, you could call this center content, you could call this left column, right column, and navigation down below. But unfortunately, can't do that on the master slide. That would be a nice addition if anyone from the Adobe engineering team are listening. But we'll see. There's always Captivate 2020, I'm assuming sometime in 2020. Now in this case here, this is a situation where while I do feel that squeeze in a row is my favorite way to go, I'm probably going to wrap to next row. And I'll show you why. Very simply, let's put something here. We'll put a star on my left-hand column. And I'm going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio, and we're going to choose a big X here for the right-hand column. So again, very clearly filling that space there. And this is the behavior I'm looking for most slides. Once we get into too narrow for side by side, I want the content to reorganize itself for smartphone view. So that looks pretty good. even if it's not the prettiest thing to look at right now. You can see what I'm all about here. Now, my thinking is like, let's put in that title placeholder. So insert placeholder objects. Let's call this title. I'm okay with that, but I'm thinking that for the individual slides, I'm going to have an alternate title object style. So a couple things I'm going to change. First of all, I don't think it needs to be 36 points. So let's go 24, which is a little more reasonable. I'm going to left align it. And again, let's choose the color that might be most appropriate here. I'm going to choose that blue that was from the company logo there. So I think that's pretty good. The other thing I'm going to do is change this to from a rounded rectangle to a regular one. And I'm going to create a new style, and I'm going to call this alternative title, because I might have more than one title. So that's going to be for this slide here. I could also add, let's add some content or placeholder object just for text caption. Now it ended up here. I actually want it down here, so you can drag that over here. I'm probably not going to use a regular text caption for most of my slides, like these ones with the funky background, but I'm going to change this to transparent. I'm going to, what am I going to do here? First of all, change that to Verdana. 16 is good. I'm going to have it more like paragraph style. And I'm going to add some spacing, because with eLearning, you know, 1 point is a little too close together. And we might even want to add some margins here. So let's go 5 and 5, just to get a little space there. And again, I'm going to create my new style here, and we're going to call this body text. Now I'm going to pause for a moment and just want you to consider something about things like this here, this text object. This is going to be one of those things that as you're building your first course, you're going to learn stuff about your theme. And what I mean by that is you're going to put in the typical amount of content you would put on a slide like this, and then very quickly realize that this stuff doesn't fit, you know, or typically the spacing might be too wide apart, or it's not close enough together. Or you might realize that while Verdana was originally designed to be a very readable font, maybe someone doesn't care for it within the stakeholder group that you're working for. So you're going to make changes to this. So as you're building your course and you make a decision, you know what, that doesn't work anymore, make the change to your master slide, make the change to your object styles, and of course, don't forget to update your theme, as I'm about to do right now, to accommodate those changes, because this is not written in stone. You don't get to do this once and never have to touch it again. Throughout your entire career, you'll be making small little tweaks to these object styles and to the themes themselves. So spend some time working on that sort of thing here. Again, I'm not going to put buttons on the master slide here, but let's put some buttons, just some placeholders for buttons for right now. And I'm going to use the new assets menu to grab some cool icons that are all free from Adobe. They're very generous with their creative stuff, so you'll have lots of things to choose from here. Let's say, for example, you're going to have, well, it doesn't even matter. Let's just choose some, insert some icons. These are all SVGs. They would be a great choice. Again, they may not look so great here. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to have 4 of them down in this area here. They could be anything. They're just there for right now. And then I'm going to select the fluid box that they're in, and I'm going to make some changes to my style here. So squeeze in a row, I think, is still a good choice because I want them to be in a row next to one another. but I'm going to change the horizontal align from center line, where they're all jammed together in the middle, to a maybe space in between, which might be a good choice, or my personal favorite, space around. And the reason I like space around is that if you're, imagine again on a smartphone, for example, where are your thumbs going to be as you're taking this course? You know, so you may not want them right up against the edge. So, you know, setting them up with a little space in between works out really well. So again, I don't want these in my master slide, but I just wanted to use them just to make sure that everything is spaced properly. And there we go. Now, again, as you're building your courses, you may learn that the caption here is not going to be a great choice. So let's start adding some regular content slides here. So you can select that as your standard content slide. And let's do another one here. And then from here, we're going to double click the title and type in some content here. And we can start typing in some content that will be in text form, you know, and, you know, something to that effect there. You may realize this doesn't work. If you find that more often than not, you're simply deleting this placeholder here every time you create one of these slides, my advice would be to get rid of it on the master slide. And I've certainly been in that situation as well. And of course, you know, you might be adding some images. So let's go to this one here and find that we'll use that reduced size image that we used for before. Normally you would have something more suitable here, but that should work. And again, you can play with your settings here. In this case here, center align is fine, but we probably want that top aligned. Make sure the right object is selected here. Squeeze in a column would be fine, and top align there. So again, here's your content. Let's add some real navigation stuff here. And let's just find a nice button that would work well for this. Let's say that's a step backwards button. So we'll download that from the asset store. And we'll do another one here of moving forward. Find that. There we go. So that looks all right. It's basically a slide. And let's see what happens on smartphone view. Very nice. So again, the content is reorganizing itself based on your design. And now that you have that, what's really important is now that you have that master slide built, and if you have dozens of slides, or, you know, let's say even hundreds of slides that are occurring in your course that are very similar to one another, because you're pulling from the same master slide view, all this stuff will be standardized. The size of your title, the size of the text here, the space for the buttons, and therefore the buttons themselves. Everything will have its own proper place. There's a couple of other slides that you would work on. I'm not going to spend too much time on those today, so I think we've covered a lot. But you obviously have to customize your question slides. So, for example, some of the things that you might do is let's select our fluid box layout. We could do some similar things that we did with our content slide. Maybe add a little bit of spacing, some margins there. Let's check the this out. So this should be Verdana. We're using Verdana as our font. Maybe you don't want it to be bold. Maybe you want to bring this down to 24 points, make it left aligned. You know, all the usual refinements. I won't go through every single possibility here. You know, in this case here, question text. Maybe we bump that down to 18 points. Again, set that to be for Dana. And then make sure that the padding isn't too large in this case here. They've set some padding up here. I'm going to get rid of that. So again, I'm building my own custom question slide and making some choices. If I double click on this, I should be able to get the font. So let's go in and get that. If I can, if it will let me, there we go. Verdana. So as you make those changes, it's not letting me here. There we go. Finally lets me. As you make those changes, make sure you're saving the changes to your existing style, or make sure you're creating a new style as you see fit. The thing about some of these objects, so you'll see your multiple choice questions have multiple different feedback options. This is going to require static fluid boxes, and how those work, because objects will stack in front of one another as opposed to filling the fluid box. You'll need to go into your position panel to really set those up properly. So in this case here, if you wanted this correct caption to fill this fluid box, first of all, make it 0 from the top, 0 from the left, or go so far as to align it both center horizontally and vertically. Change it from 90% width to an auto height to maybe percentage both, and let's just set these both at 100 and 100. And sometimes it won't let you because of things like maybe the settings of the fluid box itself. No, that looks good. But play around with it, and I think you'll be able to find, you may have to manually drag it out there. Let's see. Oh, it's not liking that so much. But I think you get the idea. But again, as you move forward, you make changes, like maybe you choose a different color and so on. Save those to your object styles, because of course what's happening at this point is that all of those object styles are contributing to your theme. And hopefully that really gives you guys a sense of what building a theme is like. I've covered sort of the basics. I mean, there's a lot that you could put into a theme like this, but I just want to make sure that you guys understand that, you know, it's a process. It's a process that goes on and continues for time as you develop, especially your first course. Let me see if my webcam is back. Wow, that's really weird. I am frozen. There we go. It's back. I have two little puppies who are telling me that it's lunchtime right now. So I think I'm going to call this a live stream at this point. I hope you got some benefit out of today's session. I know that, you know, there's so much more I could cover, because when I'm building a theme for a client, I'll be honest with you, I probably spend 4 or 5 hours building that initial draft and making all these changes and incorporating all the different brand styles, which of course is a combination of fonts. You can use, of course, the Adobe font selections. There is some other interesting hacks over using Google Fonts as well. So check out my videos. I've got a few tutorials about that. Setting up, of course, your colors. All of that stuff is really important. And of course, you need that to incorporate into the theme. And once you have that, of course, You can import the theme before starting any new project, and then you can very rapidly build that first and the second and the third and the fourth e-learning course, and there'll be a beautiful consistency across all of them. So again, thanks everyone for joining me today. I hope the rest of your day is as interesting, and I hope this has been interesting for you. Feel free to leave any comments down below, or if you'd like to see a video on a particular topic, you can throw that in the questions or comments down below. And looking forward to next time we get to share experiences like this. So talk to you all real soon. Thanks again, guys.